Choisun, she hid him in the barn, knowing she would be condemned, but never imagined what he would do for her and her daughters. The village threatened to expel her for protecting a savage. Alone, with 3 children, she faced it all. Days later, he returned. And he wasn't alone. Watch until the end and discover why this story became a legend. Subscribe now. The muffled scream came from the old barn. Donna Teresa, accustomed only to the clucking of chickens and the wind through the wooden cracks, found the sound strange. She walked carefully across the hard-packed yard of her small property in rural Mato Grosso, wielding the wooden pestle she used for mashing cassava. Night had already fallen over the Pantanal, and the sounds of nocturnal animals were her only company, besides the 3 small daughters who slept in the simple mud and thatch house. As she pushed open the barn door that creaked on rusty hinges, her heart raced upon seeing something she didn't expect. A fallen man, bloodied with strong features and closed eyes. He was a Kadiweo indigenous man. She didn't scream. She didn't run away. She observed his chest rising and falling with labored breathing, saw the broken arrow beside his body, and without knowing how to explain it, knelt down to help him. Teresa had learned to survive with little since Antonio had departed 2 droughts ago, taken by the fever that had ravaged the region. Since then, she had supported 10-year-old Luisa, 7-year-old Cecilia, and little Janaina, only 4, with cassava flour and the few fish she caught in the river. She trusted few people and avoided the sideways glances from the residents of São Miguel do Pantanal, the nearest village a 2-hour walk away. She knew the community had never looked kindly upon a woman raising 3 daughters alone, and now, with an injured indigenous man on her property, she feared what they might think. Still, something stronger than fear compelled her to act. With effort, she dragged the man into the house during the night, leaving a trail of blood that she tried to clean up the following morning. The girls were still sleeping, exhausted after a day helping their mother in the small field. She cleaned his wounds with boiled old cloths and used herbs she had learned about from her grandmother Jurema, who was said to have indigenous blood in her veins. She prepared a tea of guinea leaves, applied poultices of wormseed on the deep wound on the right side of his body, where the arrow had pierced him, and fed him the last piranha broth she had saved for difficult days. The man must have been around 30, with bronzed skin marked by traditional paintings, now almost erased by sweat and blood. His long black hair was tied in a braid with feathers and colorful beads, symbols of his position in the tribe that Teresa didn't understand. The indigenous man woke up 2 days later, while she was changing the leaves covering his wound. He didn't ask where he was. He just observed her with deep, attentive eyes as if he already knew exactly what had happened. Water was the only word he uttered in clear Portuguese, albeit with a different accent. "My name is Teresa," she said, while offering a gourd with fresh water. He drank slowly and replied, "Kayabi." He stayed there for 5 days, recovering slowly. On the 2nd day of consciousness, he managed to sit up on the improvised mattress that Teresa had arranged in the corner of the living room. The girls approached slowly. First Luisa, the oldest, who would enter the room pretending to look for something and quickly leave when he looked at her. Then Cecilia, who had less fear and more curiosity. Finally, little Janaina, who simply walked into the room and sat next to him, offering a corn husk doll she had made herself. Kayabi didn't talk much, but he knew how to listen. He told only that he had been attacked by illegal hunters when trying to protect his land against invasion. The Kadiweo reservation was a few days' journey from there, and he was one of the warriors sent to patrol the boundaries of the ancestral territory. Teresa knew about the conflicts occurring in the region. Ranchers wanted more land for cattle, prospectors sought gold in the rivers, and loggers cut down centuries-old trees without permission. It was a dangerous game, where the indigenous people always seemed to lose. On the 4th day, Kayabi was already able to walk around the house supported by a staff that Cecilia had brought him from the forest. While the girls slept, he and Teresa talked in low voices about the stars, about the medicinal plants they both knew, about the spirits of the forest. There was a silent language between them, made of glances and small gestures. She noticed how he observed the details of the simple house, how he respectfully touched the few objects that kept the memory of her deceased husband. When Janaina had nightmares that night, it was Kayabi who calmed her with a soft song in his native language. On the morning of the 6th day, Teresa woke up and realized he had left. On the kitchen table, she found a small amulet made of red seeds and macaw feathers, tied with buriti palm fibers, a symbol she didn't know but felt was important. The girls were sad, especially Janaina, who looked for the story man in every corner of the house. Teresa kept the amulet in a cloth pouch and hung it by the door as a sign of protection. The news, however, was already spreading like wildfire. Someone had seen the indigenous man around her property. Someone had commented at Seu Tiburcio's store, and soon everyone was talking about how the widow Teresa welcomed savages in her house, offering shelter and food to those who weren't people like us. The next morning, when Teresa went to the store to buy kerosene for the lamp, she felt the heavy gazes on her shoulders. Conversations ceased when she approached and resumed in whispers as soon as she moved away. Donna Gertrudis, the merchant's wife, gave her the change without looking her in the eyes. "Is it true that you're giving shelter to an Indian, Teresa?" The question came from Sohuvenal, one of the most influential ranchers in the region, who was leaning on the counter chewing tobacco. His small, hard eyes evaluated her with barely disguised contempt. "I helped an injured man, as any Christian would," she replied, straightening her shoulders. "An injured man? That's a savage woman. They've been invading lands, scaring cattle, threatening honest workers. The people here don't look kindly on those who mix with such people." Teresa felt her blood boil in her veins, but kept her voice calm. "I didn't mix with anyone. I saw someone who needed help and did what my conscience told me to do." She left the store with firm steps, ignoring the comments that followed. Upon returning home, she found Cecilia crying in the yard. The girl told her that at school, her classmates had called her daughter of a savage lover and refused to play with her. Luisa, who had always been stronger, had argued with the older boys and returned with a scratch on her arm. Only Janaina seemed oblivious to it all, playing with her straw doll and humming the melody she had learned from Kayabi. 3 days later, a group of men came to her house. There were 5: So Juvenal, Tonho the carter, the foreman from the Boy Bravo farm, a man Teresa didn't know but who had features from outside the region, and Mario, the sheriff's son. They stopped their horses in front of the yard and didn't dismount, as if they were disgusted to step on that land. "We've come to give you a message, Teresa," said Sir Juvenal, adjusting his leather hat. "Father Augusto, the sheriff, and the good men of this community have decided that it's not appropriate for a woman alone to give shelter to rebellious Indians." "My land, my rules," she replied, firmly holding the handle of the hoe she had been working with in the garden. She could feel the girl's eyes watching everything through the window crack. "You have 3 days to pack your things and leave here with your daughters," continued Juvenal. "This land was never really yours. Your husband bought it from someone who couldn't sell it. I have documents that prove this place has been part of the Boy Bravo farm for more than 50 years. Teresa knew it was a lie. Antonio had bought those 5 acres with money earned from years of hard work. He had the deed stored in a cookie tin, along with a few important family documents. But she also knew how things worked in that region. Papers could disappear, judges could be bought, and a widow's word was worth less than dust. 3 days, repeated the unknown man with an accent that seemed to come from the south. "After that, we're not responsible for what might happen." They left, leaving a cloud of dust and threats in the air. That night, Teresa couldn't sleep. Sitting in the rocking chair that Antonio had made, she looked at the amulet hanging on the door and thought about her options. She had no close relatives to go to. The little money saved would barely feed the girls for a month. Perhaps she could try life in the big city, in Cuiabá, where they said there was work in family homes. But it would be trading the freedom of the countryside for confinement in some small maid's room, with 3 children to raise. Her thoughts were interrupted by a light noise at the door. Startled, she grabbed the old shotgun she kept under the bed and approached cautiously. When she opened a crack, she almost couldn't believe what she saw. It was Donna Jurema, the oldest midwife and healer in the region. She was almost 80 and rarely left her house by the river. She was the one who had brought Teresa's 3 girls into the world, and before them, Antonio himself. "May I come in, child?" asked the old woman in her hoarse voice. Teresa lowered the shotgun and opened the door. "What are you doing here at this hour, Donna Jurema?" The old woman entered, supported by her carved wooden staff, looking around as if searching for something. Her eyes, though cloudy with age, still had a penetrating shine. "I came because the dreams sent me. I saw what happened here. I saw the wounded Kadiweu. I saw the amulet he left. She walked straight to the door and touched the small object with gnarled fingers. Do you know what this is, girl? It's a Mwira Kita, a symbol of protection. He marked you as a friend of his people. Teresa felt a shiver run down her spine. How do you know all this? Donna Jurema smiled, revealing almost toothless gums. My grandmother was Kadiweu, girl. Didn't they tell you? In this land, everyone tries to hide the indigenous blood that runs in their veins, but it always manifests itself. She sat in the rocking chair and asked for coffee. While Teresa prepared the drink on the wood stove, the old woman continued, They will return, child. The Kadiweu never forget a debt of honor, but you have to hold firm until then. I have no choice, Donna Jurema. They gave me 3 days to leave here. And where will you go? To the streets of Cuiabá? Under a bridge? This land is yours by right. It was your husband's, who bought it with sweat. And before that, it belonged to my ancestors, who respected it for generations. The old woman drank the coffee in small sips, appreciating the bitterness. I'm going to teach you something, girl. Something my grandmother taught me. She took out a small leather pouch from inside her clothes and emptied its contents on the table. They were seeds, roots, and small crystals. This will protect your house until help arrives. The next morning, Donna Jurema had left, leaving the seeds buried in the 4 corners of the yard and an herbal infusion for Teresa to sprinkle around the house. The girls woke up more cheerful, especially after their mother told them they wouldn't leave. We'll stay and fight for what's ours, she said, with a confidence she didn't completely feel. 2 days passed and the tension grew. Teresa no longer left the house, sending Luisa to fetch water from the river. The closest neighbors, So Nestor's family, who had always been friendly, now averted their gaze when the girls passed by. On the afternoon of the 3rd day, the deadline given by So Juvenal, Teresa saw a cloud of dust approaching on the road. Her heart raced. She ordered the girls inside and grabbed the old shotgun, knowing she had only 2 cartridges and would be no match for the men who would come. Contrary to what she expected, however, it wasn't the threatening horseman. It was a cart driven by Donna Jurema, who was accompanied by Father Augusto. The religious man, a middle-aged man with graying hair and a severe expression, descended with difficulty from the cart and walked up to Teresa. Donna Jurema told me your story, he said, without beating around the bush. I come to ask forgiveness in the name of the community of San Miguel. What they're doing to you is not Christian. Teresa lowered the shotgun, suspicious. Weren't you with them when they decided to expel me? There was never such a decision. So Juvenal used my name in vain. He wants these lands because they discovered there's an important spring here, which he can divert to his farm. At that moment they heard the trampling of horses. Coming down the road was So Juvenal and his men, now in greater numbers, at least 10 horsemen. Their faces showed determination and anger. The deadline is up, woman, shouted Juvenal, stopping his horse a few meters from the house. Take your offspring and get out of here. Father Augusto placed himself between Teresa and the men, raising his hand where he held a small crucifix. This is not right, Juvenal. This woman has done nothing wrong. The rancher spat on the ground with contempt. You don't understand, Father. This region needs progress. We can't let just anyone give shelter to Indians who attack our properties. It's a matter of security. It's a matter of greed, interrupted Donna Jurema, who was leaning on her staff next to Teresa. You want the spring that flows on this land to divert water to your cattle, while the village suffers from drought. Juvenal frowned, irritated at having his plans exposed. He made a gesture to his men, who began to dismount. Get out of the way. I don't want to hurt a priest and an old woman, but I'll do what's necessary. That's when they heard a sharp whistle, like the song of an unknown bird. Everyone stopped, trying to identify where the sound came from. The whistle was repeated, louder, and this time Teresa noticed movement at the edge of the forest that surrounded her property. A figure emerged from among the trees. It was Kayabi, now recovered, wearing complete body paintings and carrying a bow. Behind him appeared other Kadiweu warriors, at least 20, all with faces painted for war. Juvenal and his men instinctively backed away, some reaching for the weapons they carried. Don't do anything stupid, warned the priest, perceiving the imminent danger. Kayabi advanced with firm steps and stopped beside Teresa. In clear Portuguese, he addressed all those present. This woman saved my life when your men left me to die, he pointed to Juvenal. She is now a sister of honor to the Kadiweu people. Her house and her daughters are under our protection. Donna Jurema smiled, her eyes shining with contained tears. Father Augusto observed everything with an expression of amazement and respect. Juvenal, however, was not completely intimidated. "You have no right to be here. These lands are not part of the indigenous reservation." An older man, whom Teresa hadn't noticed before, advanced alongside Kayabi. He had graying hair, tied in a traditional bun, and wore an elaborate headdress with macaw and hawk feathers. He spoke in Portuguese with a stronger accent than Kayabi's. "I am Ubirajara, chief of the Kadiweu people. We come in peace, but with determination. We don't want conflict, but we will not back down." He made a broad gesture with his arm, encompassing the entire area. "These lands belonged to our ancestors long before you arrived with papers and fences. Now they belong to Teresa and her daughters, because she respected our blood when no one else did." The atmosphere was one of extreme tension. Juvenal's men looked nervously at their boss, awaiting orders. The indigenous warriors remained impassive, bows ready, but not aimed. It was then that little Janaina, who had been watching everything through the window, escaped her sister's vigilance and ran outside, straight into Kayabi's arms. "You came back!" she exclaimed with childish joy. The warrior bent down and took her in his arms with a gentle smile. That scene, the white girl embracing the indigenous warrior, seemed to disarm the environment. Even the rudest men seemed uncomfortable with the idea of starting a conflict in the presence of a child. Father Augusto seized the moment. "Let's all lower our weapons and talk like civilized people." He looked meaningfully at Juvenal. "Violence will bring nothing good to anyone." After a long moment of hesitation, the rancher made a gesture for his men to put away their weapons. "This isn't over," he said, turning his horse. "I have powerful friends in the capital." When they had moved away, leaving only dust behind, Teresa finally breathed a sigh of relief. Kayabi put Janaina on the ground, and the girl ran to hug her mother. Luisa and Cecilia came timidly out of the house, observing the visitors with curiosity and apprehension. Chief Ubirajara approached Teresa with dignity. "My nephew Kayabi told us what you did for him. Among our people, when someone saves a life, they become responsible for it. And when someone protects us, we repay with protection." Teresa didn't know what to say. She looked at Donna Jurema, who nodded encouragingly. "Your grandmother was of our people," continued the chief, observing the old woman. "Kadiweu blood runs in your veins, even if diluted by generations. You answered the call of blood without knowing it." That night, after much discussion, it was decided that 3 warriors would stay to protect Teresa's property. The chief promised to return soon with more men to help rebuild the house, which needed repairs to the roof and walls. Before leaving, Ubirajara gave Teresa a necklace with a green stone pendant, similar to the amulet Kayabi had left. "This is an ancient symbol of our people. Whoever wears it is under the protection of the sacred Jaguar clan." Father Augusto, impressed with everything he had witnessed, promised to speak with the bishop and the authorities in the city about the situation. "I will not let faith be used as an excuse for injustice," he guaranteed before departing in the cart with Donna Jurema. The following days were of adaptation. Teresa's 3 daughters quickly lost their fear of the indigenous warriors who stayed. Powai, the oldest of them, showed Luisa how to identify medicinal plants in the forest. Ibira, a young warrior with an easy smile, taught Cecilia to make small bows with flexible branches, and Kayabi spent hours telling traditional stories to little Janaina, who followed him like a shadow. The villagers kept their distance, but Teresa noticed that the open hostility had decreased. Some women even waved timidly when they saw her on the way to the river. Father Augusto returned a week later, bringing news. The sheriff from the larger city is investigating Sue Juvenal's threats. It seems he has problems with the law in other places too. He also brought an authenticated copy of the land deed, which he had officially registered at the city registry office, to ensure that no one can contest your right to this property. While they were talking on the porch, they saw a delegation approaching on the road. It was Chief Ubirajara, accompanied by about 30 people, men, women, and even some children. They brought tools, wood, and other materials. "We've come to fulfill our promise," announced the chief upon arrival. "We're going to build a new and strong house for the sister of honor of our people." During the following 2 weeks, Teresa's land was transformed into a construction site. The Kadiweu worked with impressive efficiency, using traditional techniques mixed with modern methods. The women of the tribe taught Teresa and her daughters to weave baskets, prepare traditional foods, and learn the properties of plants. At night, they all gathered around a fire to share stories. Kayabi often served as a translator, explaining to Teresa the deeper meanings of the legends told by the elders. One night, while the children were already asleep, he sat beside her near the fire. "When I was injured, I dreamed of a spirit guide. He told me I would find protection in the hands of someone with blood of my people, but who didn't know it. I thought it was just fever delirium until I saw your grandmother's necklace hanging on the wall." Teresa instinctively touched the green stone pendant she now always wore. "My grandmother never spoke about her origins. In those days, it was better to hide indigenous blood." She looked at the starry sky, thoughtful. How will Juvenal react to all this? Kayabi followed her gaze to the stars. "Men like him only understand the language of force, but now he knows you're not alone." The next morning, Kayabi left to hunt with some of the young warriors. He promised to return before nightfall with fresh meat for dinner. Teresa spent the day helping in the construction of the new house, which already showed its imposing structure. It would be much larger and more resistant than the old one. It was in the middle of the afternoon that they heard the sound of vehicles approaching. They weren't horses, but the roar of powerful engines. Everyone stopped working, alert. Chief Ubirajara made a gesture, and the warriors formed a protective line in front of the property. 3 large pickup trucks and a police vehicle appeared on the road. Teresa felt her heart tighten as she recognized Juvenal in the first pickup, next to a man in a suit she had never seen before. Sheriff Marcelo, a corpulent man with an ambiguous expression, got out of the police vehicle. Teresa gathered her daughters and kept them behind her, while Donna Jurema, who was helping with the construction, positioned herself at her side. "Do you see this?" Juvenal pointed to the indigenous people and the construction in progress, addressing the man in the suit. "Invasion of private property. This is what happens when the government doesn't take action against these Indians." The man in the suit adjusted his glasses and examined some papers he brought. "I am Dr. Paulo Mendez, representative of the State Land Affairs Secretariat." He introduced himself in a monotonous voice. "We have received reports of territorial conflict and irregular occupation." Chief Ubirajara advanced with dignity. "There is no irregular occupation. We are helping a friend rebuild her house on lands that legitimately belong to her." Sheriff Marcelo seemed uncomfortable with the situation. "Seu Juvenal claims that these lands are part of the Boy Bravo farm, according to old documents he presented." "Lies!" exclaimed Teresa, advancing with the deed that the priest had registered. "This land was bought by my husband Antonio and is registered at the registry office." Dr. Paulo examined the document carefully. "This deed seems to be in order, but Mr. Juvenal presented documents that indicate overlapping areas. We will need a technical expertise to resolve this." That's when a 4th pickup truck arrived, raising dust. From it descended Father Augusto and an elderly man whom Teresa immediately recognized. It was Sotiaun the registrar, as everyone called him, responsible for the region's registry office for more than 40 years. "I arrived in time," said the priest, approaching hurriedly. "I brought Sotiaun to clarify this situation." The old registrar carried a dusty folder under his arm. "I was expecting this," he said, casting a severe look at Juvenal. "When the priest told me what was happening, I went to look in the oldest archives." He opened the folder and showed yellowed maps and documents with faded calligraphy. These lands never belonged to the Boy Bravo farm. In fact, the original farm of Juvenal's grandfather ended exactly at the river bend, 2 kilometers from here. He pointed at Juvenal with indignation. "The documents he presented are forged. I know my own signature, and that on his papers is not mine." Sheriff Marcelo seemed relieved to have a clear path to follow. "That's a serious accusation, Sotiaun. Forgery of public documents is a serious crime." Juvenal paled. He tried to argue, but the Land Affairs Secretariat official was already examining the original maps brought by the registrar. "These appear to be the legitimate documents," concluded Dr. Paulo, "and they confirm the version of the lady. Teresa Oliveira," she completed with a firm voice. The sheriff turned to Juvenal. "You'll need to accompany me to the station to provide clarification about these accusations." For a moment, it seemed that Juvenal would resist. His men were tense, some with their hands close to their weapons. The Katiwe warriors noticed and silently prepared for a possible confrontation. That's when they heard the characteristic sound of arrows being strung on bows. Kayabi had returned from hunting with his companions and now surrounded the entire group from the opposite side. The rancher looked around and realized he was at a disadvantage. "This isn't going to end here," he muttered, but entered the police vehicle without further resistance. His henchmen hesitated, not knowing what to do. "You can go," said the sheriff, "but I don't want problems in my jurisdiction, understood?" Slowly, the men returned to the pickup trucks and left, leaving only Dr. Paulo, who still had matters to resolve. When the dust settled, a strange silence hung over everyone. It was Janaína who broke it, running to hug Kayabi with a cry of joy. The warrior lifted her in his arms, laughing, showing her the rabbit he had hunted especially for her. Dr. Paulo cleared his throat, embarrassed by the display of affection. "Well, we still have some legal issues to resolve. This area is close to the indigenous reservation, but is not officially part of it." Chief Ubirajara approached. "We are not claiming this land for the reservation. We are just helping a friend who has blood of our people, a sister of honor of the Kadiweu." The official seemed confused. "Sister of honor?" Dona Jurema, who was observing everything with a serene smile, explained, "It's an ancient tradition. When someone from outside the tribe performs an act of great courage or kindness that benefits the people, they are adopted as a brother or sister of honor. They have the same rights of protection as any member of the tribe." 3 months passed since that day. Teresa's new house was ready, a spacious and solid construction with hardwood and a roof that didn't let a drop of rain pass through. It had 4 bedrooms, a large living room, and a spacious kitchen with a modern wood stove. In the yard, a new chicken coop housed 3 times more birds than the previous one. The garden had been expanded and now produced more than Teresa and her daughters could consume. The surplus was sold at the city fair, along with the baskets and crafts they had learned to make with the Kadiweu women. Most of the indigenous people had returned to the reservation, but maintained regular visits. Kayabi came at least once a week, always bringing some game or seasonal fruit. He spent hours teaching the girls to identify animal tracks, to recognize bird songs, to respect the cycles of nature. With Teresa, the conversations were longer and deeper, often extending into the night when the children were already asleep. They talked about life, about losses, about new beginnings. Something was being born there slowly, like a seed that needs the right time to sprout. Juvenal had been removed from the region by court order, while he answered to charges of document forgery and threats. The Boy Bravo farm was resized according to the original maps, and part of the lands he had improperly appropriated was recognized as an expansion area of the indigenous reservation. The community of São Miguel do Pantanal was changing, slowly. Father Augusto had initiated a reconciliation project promoting meetings between the villagers and the Kadiweu. Dona Jurema, now recognized as the guardian of ancestral memory, shared her stories and knowledge with young people from both cultures. On a clear afternoon, as Teresa watched her daughters playing with Kadiweu children in the yard, Kayabi approached with a serious countenance. "I need to return to the reservation for a longer time," he said. "There are important matters that require my presence. The chief is aging and has chosen 3 warriors as possible successors. I am one of them." Teresa felt a tightness in her chest but smiled. "I understand, it's a great honor." "I will return," he promised, holding her hands with delicacy. "When the full moon returns 3 times." His eyes said more than his words. That night, before his departure, there was a celebration. The Kadiweu who were visiting lit a fire in the center of the yard. They brought drums and flutes made of bamboo and bone. They sang ancient songs in their language, while the flames danced, reflecting on their painted faces. Cecilia and Luisa joined the dance, imitating the movements of the indigenous women. Even the closest neighbors approached, first hesitantly, then accepting the invitation to participate in the celebration. Dona Jurema, seated on a small bench especially made for her, told stories to a mixed group of children, some from the village, others from the tribe. Father Augusto observed everything with a serene smile, talking with Sheriff Marcelo, who had come as a friend, not as an authority. At the height of the party, Chief Ubirajara called for silence. In careful Portuguese, he declared, "Today we celebrate not only the new house of our sister Teresa, but a new time. A time when our peoples can meet without fear, without hatred." He called Teresa and her daughters to the center of the circle. "Many moons ago, when my ancestors dominated these lands, there was a ritual to recognize those who, even without our blood, carried our spirit. He gave each of them a necklace with traditional Kadiweu symbols. This is the symbol of the protective family. While you wear it, you will be under the guard of our people, just as we will be under your guard. The next morning, Kayabi left with the others. Teresa watched him disappear around the bend in the path, his silhouette cut against the rising sun. Janaina cried a little, but Teresa consoled her. He will return when the moon becomes round 3 times, and meanwhile we have a lot of work to do. Time passed, the seasons changed. Teresa's house became a meeting point, a place where different cultures mixed and learned from each other. On Sundays after Mass, some families from the village came to visit. The children played together while the adults exchanged recipes, stories, knowledge. Prejudice didn't disappear completely. It never disappears overnight, but it receded in the face of coexistence. And when Kayabi returned, as promised, he brought news. He had been chosen as the next chief. Our people are changing too, he told Teresa as they walked by the riverbank. We need to preserve our traditions, but also learn to live in this new world. He looked at her intensely. You taught me that courage is not always in war, but often in care. The new house that the Kadiweu built for Teresa became more than a symbol. It became a meeting point between 2 worlds that for a long time lived with their backs to each other. And when, years later, Kayabi and Teresa finally united their lives in a ceremony that blended indigenous and Catholic traditions, Father Augusto declared, "This union is not just of 2 people, but of 2 peoples who have learned to respect each other." Little Janaina, no longer so little, was the first to throw flowers over the couple, while Chief Ubirajara, now leaning on a staff as Donna Jurema, had been observed with misty eyes, the realization of what the Murakita had promised so many years before: protection, honor, and a new beginning. If this story touched your heart and showed how bridges between cultures can be built with respect and courage, share it with your friends, leave your like, and subscribe to the channel for more narratives that make us think about the Brazil we want to build together, where different peoples and traditions can coexist in harmony.